This is AI News Now from ANN Live for Tuesday, April 28th, 2026. Today, the biggest stories are not just model demos. They are about agents doing real work, data centers needing real power, national science partnerships, and open models giving builders more control. First up, OpenAI's GPT-5.5. The launch went live on April 23rd, and the key update on April 24th was API availability for GPT-5.5 and GPT-5.5 Pro. But the real story is how OpenAI is positioning this model, less as a chat upgrade, more as a computer work engine. This is why we are spending more time on the surrounding release package than on the model name. A serious agent launch now has three parts: capability claims, deployment economics, and adversarial testing. OpenAI says GPT 5.5 is designed for coding, online research, data analysis, documents, spreadsheets, and moving across tools until a task is finished. That is agent language. It is a claim about persistence, not just answer quality. For viewers building with this, the right comparison is not whether GPT 5.5 writes a nicer paragraph. The comparison is whether it reduces human cleanup after a multi-step job. The benchmark table is useful if you read it carefully. OpenAI lists 82.7% on Terminal Bench 2.0, 78.7% on OS World Verified, and 98% on Tau 2 Bench Telecom. The practical question is whether those gains translate into finished tasks in your own workflows. Also, notice the competitive picture. OpenAI's own table shows Claude still leading on SWE-Bench Pro, while GPT 5.5 leads on Terminal Bench. That split is exactly why coding evals need multiple task types. Pricing confirms the positioning. OpenAI says GPT 5.5 will be $5 per million input tokens and $30 per million output tokens with a 1 million token context window. That is not bargain inference. It is priced for high-value jobs where completion quality matters. The 1 million token window sounds huge, but long context only helps if the model can find the right facts and act on them. So the eval should include retrieval, tool calls, and final verification. The date that matters today is April 28th. That is when OpenAI says testing begins for the GPT 5.5 bio bug bounty. Vetted red teamers are being asked to find a universal jailbreak against 5 biosafety questions. It is narrow, but it shows how much safety testing now has to follow capability. There is also a governance lesson here. Biology, cybersecurity, and autonomous tool use are now tied together in release planning. The more useful the model becomes, the more narrow safety failures can become product-level risks. The takeaway for builders: evaluate GPT 5.5 by completed work, not vibes. Give it a real branch, a messy research task, or a spreadsheet workflow. Measure correctness, retries, review burden, and cost per finished job. That is the standard agents have to meet now. One clean way to test this is to keep a fixed suite of 10 ugly tasks and run every new model against the same prompts, same repo, same docs, and same acceptance criteria. Story 2 is Meta, and it may be the most important business story of the day. On April 27th, Meta announced 2 energy partnerships for AI infrastructure. No chatbot, no model card, just power, storage, and the grid reality behind the next wave of data centers. Meta is useful because it pulls the camera back. Every viewer sees the AI interface, but almost nobody sees the electrical planning that decides whether that interface can scale to hundreds of millions of users. The official Meta page says the company is partnering with Overview Energy and Noon Energy. The goal is reliable power for AI infrastructure and data centers, especially when ordinary solar and wind cannot provide continuous supply. The wording matters. Meta is talking about capacity reservations, not instant deployment. These deals are claims on future supply, and future supply is becoming one of the most valuable assets in AI. The space solar idea is the visual one. Overview satellites would sit in geosynchronous orbit, collect constant sunlight, and beam low-intensity near-infrared light to solar farms on Earth. Meta says it has reserved up to 1 gigawatt of this orbit-to-grid capacity. The reason this belongs in an AI briefing is simple. If space solar even partially works, It changes the utilization math for existing solar farms. That means more clean power without the same land fight. The second part is storage. Meta says Noon Energy will provide up to 1 gigawatt and 100 gigawatt hours of ultra-long duration capacity. The pilot target is 25 megawatts and 2.5 gigawatt hours, expected in 2028. Long-duration storage solves a different problem. AI data centers do not only need cheap power at noon, they need reliable power through nights, storms, heat waves, and demand spikes. This is early. Meta says Overview's orbital demonstration is planned for 2028 and commercial delivery to the US. Grid could start as early as 2030 if the system works. But that timeline is exactly the point. AI capacity planning is now a long horizon infrastructure game. That is why the dates are so important. A 2028 pilot sounds far away, but data center campuses, transmission upgrades, and chip supply agreements are also planned years ahead. The practical takeaway is that AI bottlenecks are physical. Chips matter, but so do land, cooling, power purchase agreements, storage chemistry, and interconnects. The next competitive edge may come from whoever can serve models reliably when the grid is under pressure. For builders, the second order effect is cost. If power and grid interconnects stay constrained, inference pricing and capacity limits will stay part of the product conversation. Story 3 is Google DeepMind. 2 late April updates belong together. A partnership with the Republic of Korea announced on April 27th, and a distributed training paper called Decoupled DiLoCo, published on April 23rd. The deeper pattern is that frontier labs are no longer just software companies. They are becoming infrastructure coordinators, policy actors, and research partners at the same time. The Korea partnership is about science and national capability. DeepMind frames it around frontier AI models, scientific discovery, innovation, and local talent. The backdrop matters too. 10 years after AlphaGo in Seoul, AI science has become a national strategy issue. The Korea partnership also shows how governments want AI capability attached to domestic institutions, not only imported through a consumer app or a foreign cloud account. Decoupled DiLoCo is the infrastructure side. Instead of making one huge training system stay perfectly synchronized, DeepMind divides training into separate islands of compute. If one island has a hardware failure, other parts can keep learning. DiLoCo is technical, but the business implication is plain. If a lab can train across looser networks and mixed hardware, it can use more available compute instead of waiting for a perfect mega cluster. The chart is the proof point. DeepMind says the approach can cut required bandwidth from 198 gigabits per second to 0.84 across 8 data centers, while simulated goodput stays far higher under failures. That is a big deal if frontier training keeps spreading across regions. The reported goodput difference is especially important because frontier runs lose money when hardware sits idle. More useful training per installed chip means more model progress from the same capital base. The takeaway: frontier AI is becoming more national and more distributed at the same time. Governments want access to scientific upside. Labs want training systems that can use scattered compute. DeepMind is building for both realities. This also helps explain why Google keeps talking about full-stack AI. Models, training software, networking, and custom chips are not separate stories anymore. They compound. Story 4 is Mistral 3. The release landed on April 24th, and it gives the open model market a serious new family. Small, dense models for edge and efficient deployments, plus Mistral Large 3 for heavier work. Open models matter in that world because they give smaller teams leverage. If every frontier capability is locked behind a premium hosted API, the market narrows. If strong open models keep improving, more teams can specialize. Mistral says Large 3 is a sparse mixture of experts model with 41 billion active parameters and 675 billion total parameters. The smaller Mistral models come in 3, 8, and 14 billion parameter sizes. Mistral's sizing strategy is practical. The small models are not just mini versions for demos. They target latency, privacy, local inference, and cost-sensitive workflows, where a giant model is unnecessary. The license is the business point. Mistral says all the models are released under Apache 2.0. For companies that care about customization, private deployment, and legal clarity, that is meaningfully different from open weights wrapped in heavy commercial restrictions. Apache 2.0 also lowers friction for enterprise legal review. That does not make deployment trivial, but it removes one of the biggest blockers for teams that cannot accept ambiguous commercial terms. Availability is broad from day one. Mistral lists Mistral AI Studio, Amazon Bedrock, Azure Foundry, Hugging Face, Modal, IBM, watsonx, OpenRouter, Fireworks, Unsloth, and Together AI. That means teams can evaluate without first building a cluster. Broad availability is another sign of maturity. When a model appears across clouds and inference platforms, buyers can benchmark quality without committing to one vendor's entire stack. The takeaway: Mistral is selling control. Not every team should self-host a large model tomorrow. But if your AI strategy depends on portability, customization, European vendor diversity, or clearer licensing, Mistral 3 deserves a real eval this week. So the open model question is not, can it beat every closed frontier model on every task? The question is, where is it good enough, cheaper, more controllable, and easier to govern? That is the April 28th briefing. The big pattern is clear. Agents are getting more capable, but the hard problems are no longer just prompts. They are safety testing, power supply, distributed training, and control over deployment. For ANN Live, I am AI News Now. We will keep tracking the proof, not the hype. Across all four stories, the useful lens is operational. Which systems can finish work, get enough power, train reliably, and deploy under terms that real organizations can accept?